welcome to the conversation. So today we're talking to Pastor Jennifer Kaufman. I am Todd Brown, and that is Rick Coop. And you're joining us for a conversation that we have a lot of these conversations, but we record one every now and then and invite you to come with us. We asked Pastor Jen to come in because and join us through this because we sat down with her and had a conversation for like 2 days with a bunch of other friends, and we talked about a project that Pastor Jen has been working on for quite a little while and then launched called Discovering Hope. Discovering Hope is a 2-day course. It could be an 8-day course if she broke it up into pieces, but it's about 8 hours of time sitting together and walking through some things, and we're going to go through those things. But Pastor Jen is both an ordained elder in the Church of the Nazarene, and so, which means she's been through the book learning, and people said, you're good, and you can do this. Also, she's an author. She has 2 books. Am I getting that right? 2 books, Celebrating Brokenness and Celebrating Struggle. Both of these are on Amazon, and I'm going to put a link to them down below. You probably won't find that if you're on a podcast, but she's also a teacher, so she teaches classes here and then all over the place, and she's also a farmer's wife and a Golden Domer's mom. So we just said, after we got through with the course, it was like, we really need to have you come in and sit down and just talk about what Discovering Hope is, what seems to drive you for heaven's sakes, celebrating struggle, celebrating brokenness, discovering hope. There's a theme here, I think. So, what's that? I hate to say it quite that way, but what drives you for these things?
Well, I think that I have learned that the more I embrace authenticity in my own life, about my own brokenness, the better pastor I am, the better wife, mom, the more comfortable I am in my own skin. It's a real painful process that I started a few years ago. Like I felt like I could no longer play that game, play the church game, play the life game where everything's fine. How are you doing? I'm fine. And it was really building in my life, and then it culminated when my brother died in 2021. And I'm so thankful that there are people here in this church that, like I would walk down the hall and they'd say, "How are you?" And I would say, "I'm fine," and they'd be like, "Stop."
Yeah. Don't use the Christian F word.
Don't use that F word. And really invited me to just be broken.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the culmination of, I definitely can't live that way anymore. Yeah. And so I was getting my master's degree at that time and needed to write that big, end project paper kind of thing. I was telling my advisor about this, what ended up being Discovering Hope. It was actually a women's conference that I presented at. And he said, there's something in that and you need to explore that. And so Discovering Hope was born from that, but I see the value of being who I am. We were, before we started recording, we were talking about the imposter syndrome, and I struggle with that so much in ministry and feeling like I have to prove myself and, things like that. But I'm getting to this place where I'm like, and I don't want to be like, this is me, I'm who I am, take it or leave it. I'm not,
right.
I'm not so full of myself in that
that's
way.
Not what you're saying.
Right. I'm just saying that I'm on the journey, and I'd love for us to walk this journey together, but I'm only interested in what's real and what's true, because, gosh, haven't we all just been through so many years of the phoniness?
I was going to say that there's a culture, not just in the Nazarene church, but in all churches, there's this culture of I'm good, I'm fine, everything. If I'm not fine, then something's wrong with me and God must not like me. And so we have this feeling that we can't confess what's going on in our lives to each other because it might make us look bad. And I think it's really cool that you address that in a lot of what you say and a lot of what you do, because we need to expose it. We need to come out and, you know, let's make this real. Let's not be the people who, you know, put on the 3-piece suits and the nice dresses and walk in and everything's fine and wonderful. And when I first became a Christian, I thought about, you know, where's the rose-colored glasses now? You know, when does everything get wonderful? And then these scriptures started coming up, you know, it rains on the just and the unjust and things like that. And I start thinking, oh goodness, my problems don't go away. You know, Job's problems didn't go away. Others, when even in the scripture, when Paul says, you know, the Lord told me that His grace is sufficient, you know, for all my needs. And it started making it real to me that just because I became a Christian doesn't mean that everything's wonderful all the time.
There's I struggle to say, I'll just say it. My favorite theologian, the only theology book I ever read that made me cry, was by Mildred Wynkoop. Love Wins. Yeah, Theology of Love. Theology of Love. And she says something that I think you're saying, and that is that we have an integrity problem. When we bring people in and we go, everything's coming up roses. And we say things like, I had somebody say to me one time, if you were really, truly in communion with God, you wouldn't have the problems that you have.
Wow.
Said those words to me. If you prayed right, you wouldn't have these problems because of some of the physical problems my wife has and some of the things she's going through. Anywho, I think Mildred says, basically, there's no reading of the Bible that lands in that place. And if we give people that book and say, go read this, and then they go, these guys are a wreck.
Right. John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, Wesleyanism, you know, from which the Nazarene Church is an offshoot, was a train wreck.
He was a train wreck.
Like his
Had
emotional
an awesome marriage. Was
flirting with this other chick, you know, and I'm just like, I wish that we talked about that more. We talk about John Wesley as this icon of
holiness.
Holiness, yeah.
Holiness.
The holiness
Here.
doctrine. And yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
But also, you know, I think sometimes we have this mindset in church, it's either holiness or it's brokenness. And I feel like my ministry is saying it is both of those things.
Yeah.
And in fact, I don't think I can have true holiness without my brokenness. Because my brokenness is real. And so when I embrace that, I'm having a bad day, I'm feeling like I don't belong, I'm feeling lonely, or, you know, whatever those things are. There's an app that I have that's called Mood Tracker. And you know how sometimes you're like in a bad mood and you don't know why? So it just gives you all these emotions. Are you feeling this way, this way, this way, this way? And then it goes to the why. And it's really been helping me so much because sometimes I'm just like, I'm down. Why are you down? I don't know. And just being able to name those things and maybe even find your triggers a little bit, I think is healthy and important. But you mentioned, Rick, like, you know, wearing a 3-piece suit or a nice dress or whatever, and as putting on a little bit church. But like, I feel like if you want to wear a 3-piece suit, wear a 3-piece suit.
Go for it.
Sure.
There are days I come to church and I preach in a graphic tee and a pair of jeans, and there are days I come in a dress because that's what I felt like wearing today. And that's what I want to see people feel comfortable in their own skin.
Yep.
And feel like, recognize it really doesn't matter what you wear, except for that your clothes are generally an extension of how you feel. So wear what you feel.
Or I think they can also be a facade at times. You know, and that's more of what I meant by that.
Absolutely.
We put on the airs, but that doesn't really allow people to know who we really are, and that we're not really being true with ourselves. Either.
So, with discovering hope, I think that it's a good place to dive in because one of the characters that would be that integrity problem if we didn't point it out is David.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of, I hate to say it, like it sounds like a high school project, and it's not really. The theme verse, the guiding light for the book, is not just some esoteric, make you feel good, do whatever you feel like, God still loves you anyway thing. That's not it at all.
Right.
And I worry as we start talking about it that's what people will think. But instead, it's David in Psalm 51 and
raw, real.
That whole thing. And it's not David, Psalm 51, I rock because God loves me, things are going so great. It's so what about Psalm 51 rang out for you? Did you start with Psalm 51, or did you start with like a list of psalms, and then this one kind of became the driving force, or did you?
No.
How did that work out?
When I went to this women's conference that they asked me to speak at, I forget which verse it was, but it was out of Psalm 51. They're like theme verse.
Okay.
And so let me just. They're like, we don't care what you preach on, we trust the Lord to lead you, but this is our foundation verse. And so I was like, well, let me read Psalm 51 and dive deep a little bit. And then I was like, how can you not? And then, and you guys may know this, but this was 25 years ago. And, I was fairly newlywed, coming to this church, but I was so deep in sin. So deep. It was playing that game. You don't have to go to church very long before you know when to say amen, when to nod your head, which songs to really get affected by and all that kind of stuff. And I read Psalm 18, which is almost word for word of 2 Samuel 22. And it's David's song of deliverance after God saved him from Saul, basically. And he says things like, I stand before you righteous and blameless. And he says, he rescued me because he delighted in me, and all these things. Well, at the time, I didn't realize it was before Bathsheba. Okay, and so I was so deep in sin and couldn't figure out a way to get out of it because I thought I had to get out of it. And so I'm reading this psalm and I'm thinking, if David can have an affair, if David can kill someone, and if David can stand before God and say, I stand before you righteous and blameless, something about clean hands, I forget exactly what it was. I said, then maybe I can too. And that passage of scripture saved my life. So I've always kind of been interested in that David and Bathsheba thing and David redemption. And so when Psalm 51 came up, it just kind of like, I've come full circle here, I've been through it. And what I love about David in Psalm 51 is, I don't love David's story as far as, boy, he really messed up, right? But when he's confronted by the prophet Nathan, he immediately repents. Sometimes you need that mirror, and that's why accountability is a good thing, right? And so he immediately repents, and that's how we get Psalm 51, is David saying, oh, you betcha I screwed up. I really, really messed this one up. And how he comes to the full circleness of his relationship with God, it doesn't say this in Psalm 51, but there's still this idea of, but yet, but God, nevertheless God. And in spite of his sin and brokenness, God was always redeeming him, always restoring him. All David had to do was turn his face to him. So Psalm 51 just, even though I knew it, we all know some of those, kind of more famous verses from Psalm 51, but then it just kind of fell in my lap, and I realized, wow, this is what I've been looking for in my own life, and God is really doing something with it. When I presented it to my first women's conference, I'm just talking and not really looking at the audience, not really paying attention to them. But I happened to look up, and it was just like a sob fest. 150 women crying their eyes out. And I had told my advisor that, and he said, that's when you know. That's truth.
Yeah.
When you get to the tears, you get to the truth. And so it meant something to me, and I thought, well, maybe it'll mean something to others.
You had a quote when you were teaching here, and I loved it. I wrote it down immediately. It's amazing to know that no matter what a jerk we are, God still loves us. His grace is amazing. And that hit me because we all have those times.
Absolutely.
I have those times when I don't feel like being nicey Rick, and I become that jerk. And it's nice to know that there's still one I can turn to. So I like how you explain that about Psalm 51.
Isn't it one of the most amazing things about the Bible that we landed with? That they didn't take out the nasty bits. The broken bits.
Yeah.
The guy's in charge.
Yeah.
Let the nasty broken bits. In fact, Psalm 51, the guy who did it wrote the nasty broken bits and said, hey, y'all, we're going to sing this. It's a song.
I've always thought if I was God's marketing director, I would completely write the Bible differently, right? It would only be the highs and lows and feel-goods. Or the highs and feel-goods. And not the lows, but God's a little smarter.
Thank God God is in charge. Because you needed, you needed to hear.
And it's unfortunate, I'm going to get fired up now. It's unfortunate that the church doesn't present herself the way God presents himself in the Bible. Or the way God presents the story of man. In the Bible. We in the church tend to, there's a reason that the outside world, I don't like us and them, the lost and the found, I don't like that, but however I want to say it, because I don't like drawing those lines. But there's a reason people think that the church is hypocritical. Because it is.
Because we are.
Yeah.
Come on.
But so is the world, But when you're hurt, and sometimes I can get on my soapbox towards people who say stuff like that, well, so are you, and so is this, blah, blah, blah. But if we would just present ourselves as, I am no different than you, except for I get up on Sunday mornings. That's the difference as far as our brokenness. Now I have an eternal hope, and I have someone I can turn to every day, and I have the rock and the foundation. So obviously that's a lot different. But on surface level, I'm broken just like you are. I have a past just like you do. I have a history. I messed up today. And so, right.
I'll mess up again.
Right. I guarantee it's going to happen. And so I just really wish that we in the church, and maybe that's kind of been my drive in the last few years, is to help the church embrace our brokenness. I wrote a book called Celebrating Brokenness. It's not that I'm celebrating the fact that we're sinful, or that we mess up so many times or whatever. I'm celebrating the fact that God loves me in spite of, and maybe even because of my special.
It's not because we're little grace-making machines,
right?
But because
cranking it out today.
Dude, you would not believe the grace I made. I had the Lord make today. So you take a trail through. Discovering hope, and I think what we're talking about really is kind of the front end, which is embracing a heart of confession. So just being willing to say, I see it, I get it, I see where I went sideways here, or I see that I have gone sideways, would you please help me see better? And so then it's embracing a heart of purity, embracing a heart of restoration, and embracing a heart of sacrifice. So I think it's important to say that we don't stay at confession.
Right. It's the first step.
The beginning of the process.
Moves us into healing. You can't have, I don't think, unconfessed stuff. Confession is a hard word for people, right? I watch a lot of crime shows, so to be confession is, I'm going to lead you into admitting your crime, your sin. But confession is just truth. It's just speaking your truth. Now that's a phrase that kind of is a buzzword right now.
Yeah.
Speaking your truth.
Your
owning
truth, as if there were different
Right.
truths. But yeah.
But we talk about confessing sin, which we're not good at doing, the Christian world, we try to hide it. And I really focus on confessing lament. We're not good at doing that. How many times have we been told in our grief, like when someone dies or we lose someone, well, they're in heaven, you'll see them again. You shouldn't mourn because you know where they are. And I just want to punch people when they say something.
Don't you have faith?
I know, right?
If you had faith, you would know.
I know that there are well-meaning intentions behind
He's in that
it.
good place.
Right. With Ted Danson.
Yes.
But, it's really about, Jesus grieved. Jesus mourned. He showed us how to do it, which, when it says that Jesus wept, which, by the way, when my Domer was little, he thought the verse was Jesus swept, and he was going to sweep my house because he wanted to be like Jesus.
Go with that.
Well, I let him think that for a while.
Yeah, don't correct that.
But I don't think that Jesus had a little tear trickling down his cheek. I think he wept. I think he sobbed because he knew he was angry at death, because death does separate us. And I don't think God is mad at us because we grieve when someone dies, even though we know we'll see them again. It's going to be a while. It's going to be a long time. And death isn't fair. We weren't created to die. We were created to live.
Yeah, I was just thinking that myself. That it wasn't supposed to happen.
So you got to confess those things. And then I also talk about confessing the gap, which is a term that I got from Pastor Darrell Blank. He's a pastor in Ohio. And with his permission, he let me use the phrase. But it's basically that here's God, here's Christ, and here's me. And there may not be sin between us that's separating us. There may not be unconfessed anything. But he's still, pretty perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm still down here. And I when I confess the gap, I'm making that gap smaller, getting closer and closer. And so I just really feel like confession is the beginning. It's the foundation before you to discovering hope. Because
Recognizing the problem instead of just driving down the road with a flat tire that has no air in it and then destroying more stuff.
Right.
At some point you go, hey, you know what?
Right.
I think I got a flat tire.
Thursday, here's confession. I got pulled over Thursday, and thankfully, very nice young man, officer. Now I'm at the age where I say, very nice young man, and didn't give me a ticket, even though I deserved it. And I was going significantly over the speed limit, and he said, "Well, just slow down." I said, "Okay," and took off. And I looked down, and I'm speeding again. 10 miles over the speed limit, and so. Those are those habits that need confession, because we need to shine our own light on those. Now, thankfully I didn't get a ticket, but now I'm like watching my speed because I don't want a ticket. And so the more I think that we confess, the more we're aware. And the more we're aware, the closer we are to God. We don't have anything in between us that's unspoken, that's unrecognized, and so to me, the confession is the key. And then you move in to purity, the heart of purity, which is not about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about, we use Mary of Bethany in that part of the workshop. And just how she, we see her twice at Jesus' feet, 3 times, at Jesus' feet. Once when they're having a party, Martha's unhappy because she's doing all the work. Once when her brother died. She throws herself at his feet, says, "If you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died." And then the 3rd time when she anoints him, prepares him for burial, basically, for death, And just that kind of real, she was always real and raw with Jesus. What's it called when you have somebody you look up to? What a role model to look to. And then we move into the heart of restoration, which is Mary of Magdala, and how she was present for Jesus, and she was all in with him, and had allowed Jesus to restore her life, because even who wants to be possessed by demons?
Yes, right.
I'm sure that wasn't her goal.
Right.
But so often we hold on to those demons, right? We hold on to our own And I'm talking about demons like emotional, issues and things like that. We hold on to that because that's what we know. We don't let God restore us because the pain is better than the freedom that you don't know.
It's interesting the things they called demons then and what we might call them today. We might call it epilepsy today. Or we might call it depression
Mental
today.
illness.
We might call it schizophrenia. We might call it, because you've got voices talking to you. You've got all these little things that we've doctored it up to make it seem like a human can just resolve it. And some of them we can.
Absolutely.
But, interesting.
But like addiction and things like that,
That's absolutely.
Once you make the choice to start, and then you no longer have choices. And addiction is a battle that I feel for our friends who are struggling with that, because that's hard to get out of.
Some of them, they own you. You lost control about trip 2. Interesting. One of the things that I remember from the class that you said was, and it's maybe stepping back, but it was you said we are really good at being fine and so bad at being real.
And I truly believe that because there'll be, as a pastor you get this too. People text you or call you for the week. They're telling you about their issues, and they can be like deeply heartbroken or deeply broken in some way, and then they come in on Sunday and you want to like be face to face with them and talk to them about it, and they don't want to talk about it here.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, I get that, but on the other hand, if this isn't the safest place, then I don't know what we're doing. I literally don't know why we're here or what we're doing. If the church, if you need a physical safe place, if this isn't it,
how did
why?
we get here?
Yeah.
How did we get here? How did we take that book with the story of that man and all the things that we know? Just give me the Gospels. How did we get the stories of that man and get to a point where this stopped being a hospital and started being a fashion show and I ain't saying if you wear a suit that you're at a fashion show, but I am saying there's a set of things. Like I said, I've said a few times, we had somebody who left our church because they said the last straw was when that Todd Brown went up there and he was preaching in blue jeans and cowboy boots.
And isn't that a burden? Or do you feel that burden?
You're like, what?
I feel like
I don't feel a burden for those folks. This is weird. I've said to people before, are you saved? Well, yes, I believe I'm saved. I confess Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and I walked the Roman road, and I did all the stuff. I am saved. Okay, then I'm not worried about you. If you leave and 10 funky people who don't know Christ and have absolutely no confidence in their salvation came in the door as you were leaving,
that's a good way of looking at it. That's a good. I know we've lost people because I'm a female, heaven forbid, up on the platform.
Woman shall not teach.
Right. That's a whole other story. But if I hear you right, what I hear you saying is, where did we stop making love the thing?
Yeah.
That's what Jesus was all about, and that's the other journey I've been on. I'm not a naturally affectionate person, not a naturally loving person, and I've had to work really hard. And I've had to pray, okay, God, I don't know how to love. Like I don't have the skills. So I need, even at one point, I realized I don't know how to love you. You tell me to love you first. Love the Lord your God with everything you have. I don't know how to do that. Can you show me? Can you teach me? Can you give me some of your love, so that I can return it to you? And that's absolutely what he did. And I think now that I'm talking about a 15-year process here. I think now most people, except for maybe you guys, would consider me loving.
We'll
Just
pray
kidding.
about that.
But the Lord has really worked on my heart in that way, and.
Well, a weird one that I know about you, I'll telling you, a weird one that I know about you is there was a time when what you said with your face may have not been what you really felt, but you would say you wanted nothing to do with the kids.
Right.
And then, almost as if God sicked them on you, some of the girls adopted you as their person that they connected with.
Yeah.
And then you have such a natural way with them that you don't know that you do, but they feel you're anyway. We'll call that an answer to prayer.
Yeah, absolutely. Who would have ever thought? In fact, I think I'm on Kidstown duty on Easter Sunday because nobody wants to miss Easter Sunday. So I'll do it. No problem. We'll have a blast. We'll have so much fun. But that is a good example of how God changed my heart and taught me how to love. But if the whole point, so now I'm thinking that maybe my ministry has two facets, love and brokenness. Yeah. Because if the whole point is love, what are we doing?
What are we doing? What are we doing?
How did we miss the gospel of love?
Yeah. One of the things that you said was confession doesn't have to be scary, just real. But going back to the point that you made a couple minutes ago, we've made it scary.
Absolutely.
We've made it scary for each other because people are afraid that if you do confess to them, that the next thing that's going to happen after they leave you is you go to somebody, did you hear about what so-and-so did?
Yeah. I don't know if we can have him around our kids anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can we really have him touching the communion stuff?
Exactly. That Todd and I have met for a long time, and that's a great way to be able to say something to somebody and know that there's not going to be a judgment there. There's not going to be an issue. So I just want to hit that again, that confession is not it does not have to be a scary thing. Especially when you're confessing to the Lord our God.
Right.
Because he already knew. It was already there. When he was walking in the garden and said, where are you? What are you guys doing? He knew. And I think we need to try to help each other. I agree with you. This church is very good about that. We need to try to help each other throughout the Christian faith to be able to be real. It doesn't have to be scary. It just needs to be real. We need to help each other be real with what's going on.
So you went on in the class. You go on to Lamentations, which talking about being real. Yeah. And I was reading back through some of the Lamentations at Lamentation 3, and something for me that jumps out that always makes me wonder, when we hear Lamentations and we hear that prophet or that king lamenting, is the fact that he says God did it to him, does that mean that God did it to him?
Right.
So 31 is, we'll see what Siri has to say about it. Welcome to the show, Siri.
Oh my gosh, that'd be a hilarious
next week,
podcast.
ChatGPT. It says he shut out the light. He broke his bones. He surrounded him with anguish. He buried him in the dark and bound him in chains. And I think, there are people who say, Bible said it, it's literal. There are people who take the parables of Jesus and go, no, that happened. Dude, it's a parable. It's a fable. So, what do you think?
Hey, Jeremiah felt like God was doing those things to him, but God was not doing those things to him. Even Jesus on the cross, right, felt like God had forsaken him. Yeah. But God had not forsaken him. And I don't know if you remember, it's been years, but you and I were working a Good Friday service together, Come and Go Communion, and having a biblical conversation. And you said, are you a literalist, a Bible literalist? Yeah. And I think at the time I really was.
I remember that conversation.
Yeah. And because I felt like I'm not smart enough to know when it's...
That's what you said specifically.
Really?
Yeah.
When am I supposed to take it literally and when am I not? But there are things that are obviously not literal. you know, and those are the things, and the rest of it, I just have to trust the Lord to reveal to me, or use scholars and things like that. But yeah, I used to take it word for word. If it said it, that's exactly what happened.
On the other hand, when in doubt, that's the best plan.
Well,
if you're questioning, is this literal or not, just go with it.
Well, and I think the barometer is this love? Is this love, or is it a story that's going to bring us around to love? And that's two different things. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, does a loving God, I think there's a part where it says, lie in wait like a bear to pull your bones apart.
Trying to get me.
Right. Does a loving God do that?
Yeah.
That's not the God I know. That's not the love I know.
Yeah.
But
God is love, waiting in the corner to pounce on you and rip you to pieces.
Right. Makes
I
zero
think
sense.
not.
Yeah. Makes
But
zero sense.
you felt that before.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have felt that about.
Oh, absolutely.
We felt that about our parents. We felt that about God. Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
You big meanie. The sky bully, as somebody was telling me once when I was trying to talk to them about God, and they're like, "I have no interest in the sky bully." That's not nice. Don't say that.
No, but I like that name.
Well, it's Bruce Almighty, smite me, Almighty Smiter.
Oh yeah.
But this morning, the analogy that came to me was, it's like our children. First, this is all hyperbolic. This is all exaggeration of, you've killed me. Because that's where you're at that moment. But it's our children, we said, don't touch that stove. Don't touch that stove. That dad's got to turn around here and I got to pour the pasta in the strainer. Don't touch the stove. Don't touch the stove. Don't touch the stove. So you go to pour the pasta in the strainer and your kid's like, I have got to touch the stove. And then they touch the stove and then their hand swells up and gets a blister and they look at you like you betrayed them somehow. And I think that's kind of where we're at is honey there? Yeah, I bought the stove. I turned it on. Yep, I boiled the pasta on it. Sure enough, did that stuff.
Also told you 1,000 times not to touch it.
Also told you don't do that. So I think from a Lamentations perspective, one, it's hyperbolic. It's crushed. It's that depth. But at the same time, we have to be... Confession, you have to be willing to bring it, don't you?
I think... Go ahead.
That was the hardest part in the whole course. That was the hardest part for me. You actually have... I want you to know she doesn't have you state it publicly, but you have what is your current lament. I when I started thinking about it, that was hard because I did not want to answer that.
You don't want to give language to it.
No, because I knew as soon as I did, it was going to be real.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it. I've been able to compartmentalize it away and put it like in a room that I don't have to deal with. But as soon as I wrote it down, it became real.
Sure.
And it was emotional.
It's painful
for me. Yeah.
Grief has its own language. And again, grief can come from death. It can come from a different kind of loss. You can lose a job, lose a marriage, lose just a friendship or whatever. There's a lot of loss. There's a lot of ways that we grieve. I think that collectively we've grieved through COVID. And we haven't had the right language because we've been so busy attacking each other in the last 3 years that we don't know how to just grieve the fact that we've gone through this.
Absolutely.
We don't have the words for it. So I think grief has its own language, and it's hyperbolic, like you said, and that's okay.
You said. Do you hate it when people quote what you said to you?
No, I love it.
As long as they get it right.
Yeah.
You said once lament is expressed, truth returns. And I think that's what you're saying, Rick. Is once you expressed it.
Yep.
Oh snap! Now we're talking. Now it's real. Now I can.
Yeah.
It isn't. But Lord, I work out. Why did I have a heart attack?
Yeah.
It's. Now you said it.
Yep.
Now you have to deal with. Well, here's maybe the reason.
Well, and I think also we're afraid to express it because it's not kind. So when my brother died, and we made it to the hospital probably 5 minutes before he breathed his last breath, and I'm so grateful that we made it. But on the way home, I was unhappy. I'll put it like that.
You were hyperbolic.
I was hyperbolic, and I was screaming at the Lord, and my husband was driving, trying to keep us on the road. And
praise God for spouses,
right,
who love us.
Right.
I can imagine what's going through his. Just let her do it.
Just keep swimming.
Focus on driving. Focus on driving.
But I was, we've talked about this. I was so sure that God was going to heal him. 110%. There was no doubt in my mind. And so, when people will say things like, God never lets you down, God never disappoints you, that's 100% not true.
Yeah.
He completely let you down.
There's a book full of it. We were just talking about it, yeah.
Right. Of course he lets you down in that he doesn't do what you want. And doesn't always interfere in life the way you've asked him to. But that doesn't mean that he's not good. That doesn't mean that he's not love. That just means that I didn't get what I want. And I have never expressed myself like that before, or since, as raw as I was.
It's not healthy to do it again and again and again, but it happened.
Right. In that moment, and it felt good to get all those things out. And other times since my brother died, when I've grieved and I've been in public, I literally go like that, just because if you could really hear the gut-wrenching sounds that come from my soul, it would scare you, So, but we have to start with that confession with God. We have to give language to our laments. And if we don't have the language, they're in the Bible.
Yeah.
We can use someone else's laments to help us have language.
I like what you said about the guttural thing, though, because there are times when I am so God that I don't have the words, and I just, the pain comes from in here, and sometimes it's a groan or.
The Lord hears the groaning of our hearts, as they say. Yeah.
But the comfort is he's big enough to handle it. We got to realize he's big enough to handle it.
The heart of purity. So we've gone through confession. We've gone through
purity.
Purity.
We've gone through purity is the second one.
And it's all about being brought back to the realness. Pure again isn't perfect. It's real, and we can just see. And the whole point of Psalm 51 is David asks God to restore his heart, to bring him back to a heart of purity. And has faith that God. That's what gets me about David is it doesn't bother him at all to ask God to do that for him. It doesn't bother him at all. Like David's like, I know I should offer sacrifices, but they're not really going to please you because what you want is a heart. Is my heart. So hey, will you be my sacrifice? I mean, it's just so weird that David has a pure enough heart to just be real with God and say, I am a dog. I didn't just mess up. I changed the world. Basically.
Yeah, literally changed the world.
Yeah. And, hey, will you kind of take care of that for me?
Yeah.
David recognizes that sacrifices aren't going to take away the consequences.
Yeah, I got nothing.
Here it comes.
Speaking of scriptures, what you're saying, it strikes a chord because it was a scripture I read this morning that I don't know that I had ever seen that went,
what was it?
I can't. I didn't write it here. Why would I write it here? It was too good. It doesn't make any sense at all.
He'll add it to the program now.
Yeah, but it may have been the lament, reading the whole lament. It was basically God's, so many times we hear, by the time we get to Isaiah, God's like, yeah, I'm done. I'm just telling you, look, here's the deal. I'm just take my hands off, and you guys, you want to drive? You just drive. I'm just gonna let you have it. I'm just telling you about you're fixing to get your butt whooped, and the reason is because I'm gonna let them bad guys that have been hold back. I'm just gonna let them go. Because God doesn't generally. Very, 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 very few moments when He goes and puts the whooping on. He mostly goes, you know what? I'll let you have what you want. Here we go. Buckle up, Buttercup. But there's so many times where He says, look, your sacrifices mean nothing to me. Your burnt offerings smell horrible to me. Just leave me alone. Stop praying to me. Because it means nothing. Because I'm watching y'all and you're not doing what you're saying. But what I read this morning was basically this and this and this. In other words, I'm going to confess and I'm going to get right and I'm going to repent and I'm going to shift my way. And then it says, and then there will be bulls offered at the altar again.
It is Psalm 51.
It's Psalm 51. You should pick that for a book or something. But that's where I was getting from. But it's that idea that it's not that he doesn't love our sacrifice. He didn't. I'm going to get crazy. Somebody's going to tell me I'm wrong. I don't know that God invented the sacrificial system that we used at Cain and Abel and those things. I don't know that he created that. But he went, you know what? You did that in love, and that's sweet. I appreciate that. It's like your kid goes and makes you a drawing, and you're like, oh, honey, that's so sweet. What is this? I don't know what. But it doesn't matter what it is. It didn't have to be the Mona Lisa. It can be, this is love. And the Mona Lisa done in abject ego, well, he'd be like, whatever, just take that home. I don't care.
It's all about the heart and the authenticity of the heart. Purity is not about what you look like on the outside, which is what we tend to, and it's not like the purity movement, stuff like that, ridiculous.
Did you get your purity ring?
Right. We did a little damage with that too. And then the purity heart leads to the heart of restoration and the heart of sacrifice, and which is living like Jesus lived, basically. And hopefully, as you go through the 4 sessions, you get to that place where I can keep going. I have discovered hope, and I'm ready to take my grief with me. This is not about leaving your grief behind. It's about taking it with you.
Because I was going to say, as you talk about it, as you say that, you are nothing, Pastor Jen, is nothing if not real.
Good.
About what we're talking. No, that's what when you're teaching or when you're preaching, you're nothing if not real. And so, when people come to discovering hope, the expectation is, okay, you got hope. There's your start. Have a nice day. Moving on. That's all going to happen in 8 hours, 2 4-hour sessions.
Nope.
No.
No. Hopefully, we give you tools that you can take with you.
There you go.
And ways to come back to, like, we all have days where we feel hopeless. So how can I regain that hope? How can I come back to it? How can I remember that there's purpose in my pain? And so we use, lots of scriptures, and there's lots of books available too. That maybe I would put a book list in the back of the book.
That would be great.
Because I did so much research when I was writing it, and that we just, none of our pain is new. Pain has been around from the beginning, or from the fall, and so that can either comfort you or not. It comforts me to know that I'm not the first one who's grieved, that I'm not the first one who's lost a twin, that I'm not the first one who's blah 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 blah, whose parents were divorced, whose dad was an alcoholic. There's a little bit of camaraderie in that when you find that person who's been, like you and I have been through very, very similar circumstances in our upbringing and stuff, and we've talked about that before. And one time we were being authentic with each other, and we were like, gosh, I can't believe how similar. But we had never talked about it before, And that's another thing that I think, I don't ask people to answer out loud. Because that's not for everybody. But boy, if you want to, and once those stories start flowing, you realize you're not the only one. And that's so important. And that's why all this authenticity before the Lord and each other is important. Because pain can either isolate us or unite us. And it's so much better to be united.
When you confess something, what darkness wants to tell you is that when you confess it, that you have now given ammunition to the others to hurt you. There's a weird thing about if a cat is hurt, if a cat is damaged in some way, you may never know till it dies of it, because cats, through evolution, the evolution of cats is they have learned that if they would show weakness, the others would hurt them or run them off. So they're very stoic about what their deal is, which is why they act like they don't need you. Because if they felt like you thought, anyway. So the point is, we humans are that way. We're, and particularly guys. But I say particularly guys. That's very sexist because I know that women have a social structure of power as well. It's I'm the cool one. I know all the answers, and even if it's wrapped in their problems, it's my problems were worse than yours, and I have figured out how to resolve them.
We compete,
and if you would just be like me and eat my food and do my exercises and then you would be.
You'd be just like
if you prayed to Jesus the way I do, if you used my devotional, there's all these little power structures. But actually, it's. Wow, there's a whole show, Rick, talking about the difference between confessing your sin and bragging about it.
Oh yeah.
Just hit me. But when you confess when you confess what's wrong, the problems you have, when you stop living in the shelter of I'm fine, when we can do that, we just. There are stories in the Old Testament that are very practical and physical that apply to the spiritual, and one of them is there's gross and gory detail in the Bible, in the Old Testament, about how to deal with mold. Take it out of the wet corner with the other clothes, take it outside and expose it to the sun, clean it and lay it out, and it will help. Your yuck, when you take it outside and you expose it to the sun, you see how I used that twist? S-O-N, baby. Then you've weakened it. You've exposed it.
Yeah, and I do think it's a good point that when you live confessionally and authentically, you are giving your power to someone else. They may come back and hurt you. I'm not saying that living transparently is going to be easy. And I'm not saying that confession is not going to bite you in the butt. If I can say that on a Christian podcast.
Yes.
But
wait, Christians have butts? Go ahead.
I meant B-U-T, of course. But that may happen. And it's hard to give our power to someone else. But we're called to do that.
That's exactly the point that I was just going to make. We are called to be vulnerable with each other. We're called to be open with each other. I have to go back to what Todd was saying. Instantly, I thought of the little scene when they're all on the boat in Jaws. This is like going way back. And they're talking about their different wounds. And I got this in 1967, blah, 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 blah. This vulnerability isn't about boasting about, all these things that I have. And, it's about being real enough to say, this is my weakness. This is my pain. This is my hurt. This is my brokenness. And when you do that and you start walking that journey, like you just said, when you start walking that journey together, then there's a healing that happens together. On the other side of that is a bond and a strength that you two, because of the sharing of your similarities of your life, the friendship grew stronger because of that. And when we walk that pain, that brokenness with each other and share our brokenness, then we make the cords even strong. Iron sharpens iron, steel sharpens steel.
Yeah.
We bring it together.
So coming full circle, and in doing that, I think that's discovering hope, right?
That's the
Jen's been through that. Rick's been through that. I know them. And I know that there's something weird about them. They've got an okayness with where they're at. They're not hiding in that pile of clothes in the corner, festering with it. They've moved on. I want to move on. I want some of that. That's the. Is that fair to say? That's discovering hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why part of why this has been so important to me. Why God has laid it so heavily on me to share it with others because, two things. One of the things I said a lot in Discovering Hope is don't compare your story to someone else's. Mm-hmm. You'll be tempted to do that. And you'll be tempted to think, my story's not as painful because they lost this. Mm-hmm. Or I'm just here because my marriage broke up. No one died. Well, something did die. Absolutely. A relationship is important. And so don't compare your pain because your pain is real and important, and God cares about your pain. And also don't think, but you can also flip that around, and be like, my pain's the worst of anybody's, and poor me, and woe is me, and that's not healthy either. So I just want us to travel. We're journeyers, right? We're traveling down this road of life, trying to take as many people with us as possible, and I kind of feel like if we're holding on to our pain like this, then our arms can't take people with us. We can't gather people. But the more you're willing to be authentic, again, it is painful. It's pulling the Band-Aid off, and you are opening yourself up. Power is a word that we probably don't talk about a lot, but we all have a certain amount of autonomous power, And when I give my power to you, that's I'm opening myself up. But Jesus said, the first will be last, the greatest will be least. All these things that he told us, where we turn that idea of a kingdom upside down, that's how we're going to make it. And I don't mean make it like getting to heaven by the skin of my teeth.
That's how we're going to discover hope.
Right. Way to segue.
My golly.
Tell us how you see that happening with either groups or...
Yeah, I feel like, this is great for churches, women's groups, men's groups.
Thank you for saying that, men's groups.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because we have things that we need to deal with.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're, I'm going to say it, sometimes we're just too weak to allow ourselves to say, I've got an issue. And it takes a lot of strength to say, I've got a problem.
Yeah, it takes a lot of vulnerability, I think, for men to be touchy-feely.
Yeah.
Because I think men are touchy-feely, because we're created in God's image. Yeah. We're all touchy-feely, but men have learned to put that wall up. Yeah. That women are celebrated when they are touchy-feely, and men are not, and that's unfortunate.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I really appreciated you saying it. So you're seeing this at groups, conferences, men's groups, women's groups, conferences.
It could be a weekend, Friday night, Saturday. It could be a few weeks in a row, like do one session a week. And as I think about that, I kind of like that idea because it gives you really a lot more time to discuss and to process. So you leave and you process it for a week and come back and continue. And plus you can keep bringing people in, even though I think the Heart of Confession is the place to start. That doesn't mean you can't get something from the other ones.
You said something too while we were talking earlier about a Saturday and then preach on a Sunday.
So, Pastor Jen is not in a position of being the senior pastor at a church, so that isn't her gig. Pastor Jen feels more led, correct me if I'm wrong, to be going out into the world. She doesn't like the word evangelist, but that's kind of what she does. But she tends to be working on what we've been talking about, things like discovering hope. People who are struggling, or people who are broken and who are trying to find a way to come up and out and feel through that. Your group doesn't have to be broken in order to work through this, but they do need to be. We all have a bit of struggle that we're dealing with, or we may or may not even be willing to admit it, or we have others who are. So what Pastor Jen does is she goes and she is right now doing this presentation called Discovering Hope, this group gathering called Discovering Hope. It takes about 8 hours, generally 2 4-hour sessions. We've talked about, Pastor Jen did it here on a Friday afternoon, or Friday evening, Saturday morning. That's a great way to do it. Gives you some time to go home and canoodle on what you learned. But you could do a whole Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday morning, Saturday evening. And then if you are so inclined, Pastor Jen could stay and preach the next morning. I say that, it makes it sound like I'm asking you to do that. That's not even close to what's going on.
It's fine with me.
But Pastor Jen does love to do that. If you're particularly far away, I think you guys can coordinate how that works.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do 3 weekends, that would be fine. Preferably if you were in Hawaii, then she
Or
would.
Puerto
Rico. You know, she would come.
Sacrifice.
Pastor Jen,
Be glad to be the sound man.
Okay.
Pastor Jen, like any of the three of us, is not in this for the money.
Right.
And so you guys work out whatever you feel like works for helping her get there and work with you guys together. But she has a heart for helping those and helping all of us recognize our relationship with Christ and where we fit in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
For coming and spending an awful long time talking to us in our new thing, these conversations and all of our new technologies and how all this works. But I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anytime. It was fun.
Guys, you have a great rest of your day. We hope that you have stopped and spent some time with us. And we'll talk to you later.
Bye. Thank you.